My name is Jessica. I'm a senior psychology student at university, always immersed in books and theories that attempt to decipher the human mind. Today, like so many other nights, I'm heading home after one of those long and solitary sessions at the university library. My life is a mix of tight schedules, challenging classes, and the constant search for balance between academic and social demands. Despite the difficulties, I remain determined, knowing that every night of study is a step closer to my goal. Before the incident that would change my life forever, I was just another student trying to balance studies with occasional fun. Among my friends, I've always been known as the reliable person, the one who is there to listen and advise. However, behind my facade of calmness and understanding, there's a latent nervousness, a feeling that the world could turn chaotic at any moment. That night, I couldn't have imagined that my world would be turned upside down on a late-night bus. After hours immersed in dusty books and meticulous notes, I decided it was time to head home. The library was nearly empty as I left. Only a few last-minute students and the night guards remained. The cool night air welcomed me as I walked towards the nearby bus stop. The night bus was already waiting, its dim interior lights and purring engine signaling its readiness. I boarded with a sigh of relief, eager for a moment of calm before reaching home. I chose a window seat where I could watch the city lights gradually fade as the bus moved forward. The other passengers seemed weary, some were dozing off, others lost in their own thoughts. There was an elderly man with a folded newspaper on his lap, a young woman with headphones immersed in her music, and a couple exchanging occasional whispered words. Each of them carried a story I would never fully know. Yet, in that moment, we were all united by the simple act of being on the same bus, heading towards our individual destinations in the darkness of the night. I leaned back in my seat, feeling the fatigue of study beginning to dissipate. The bus's steady rhythm and the gentle murmur of the passengers created an atmosphere of relative tranquility. Little did I know, soon this calm would be replaced by a tumult of terror and despair that none of us could have predicted. What began as a peaceful journey home turned into a nightmare without warning. The bus glided quietly down the road, city lights merging into a blur of colors outside my window. I was nearly lost in thought when the unexpected happened. The sound of doors being violently thrown open and raised voices invaded the bus. I looked around in confusion, and before I could process what was happening, men dressed in dark clothes and terrifying masks stormed aboard, armed to the teeth. Panic gripped the passengers immediately. Screams echoed through the bus as people tried to hide or shield themselves. I found myself paralyzed, watching in disbelief as the kidnappers imposed their presence with brutality. Some passengers were assaulted, shoved to the ground without mercy. The threat of weapons hung in the air, filling it with palpable and menacing tension. I was forced to remain seated, eyes fixed on the floor as one of the kidnappers shouted demands at the driver. It was a speech filled with hatred and distorted ideology, a bizarre mix of reasons that I could barely comprehend in that moment of terror. My thoughts whirled in turmoil. Fear mingled with a strange sense of unreality. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a passing nightmare from which I would soon awaken. But the screams and violence around me were painfully real. In the midst of the chaos, I realized we were now united not only by the fate of sharing a bus, but also by the terrible experience of facing human cruelty head-on. The atmosphere inside the bus was like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. The kidnappers maintained an iron grip over all of us, every move closely monitored by cold, relentless eyes behind their sinister masks. Some passengers succumbed to panic, their voices rising in desperate pleas or cries of terror. Others attempted to negotiate with the kidnappers, seeking any shred of understanding in a scenario that defied all logic. And then there were those who, faced with imminent threat, began to reveal dark secrets, perhaps hoping to gain sympathy or at least leniency from the captors. I remained seated, trying to keep my breathing steady as I watched the chaos unfold around me. My thoughts turned to my own fears, buried deep within me. The harsh reality of the situation forced me to confront what I feared most: loss of control, helplessness in the face of imminent danger. Amidst the whirlwind of emotions, a personal secret emerged, as unexpected as it was frightening. I remembered a past experience, an incident I had carefully kept hidden, even from close friends and family. The fear of judgment, of being seen as weak or vulnerable, made me shudder. But in that moment, the need to survive eclipsed any shame. I had to stay calm, think clearly. Watching the kidnappers and the other passengers, I began to formulate a strategy, a faint hope for escape or resistance. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Every second counted, every decision could make the difference between life and death. While the kidnappers continued to impose their will upon us with calculated cruelty, I knew I had to find a way to confront my own fears and secrets if I wanted any chance of surviving the relentlessly unfolding night ahead of us. Time dragged painfully inside the bus, each minute prolonging the sense of despair and uncertainty. Tensions peaked as the kidnappers grew increasingly impatient and cruel. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare with no escape. I knew we had to do something before it was too late. Looking around, I found looks of fear, determination, and desperation on the faces of the other passengers. It was then that something inside me shifted, a silent determination rising against the terror that surrounded us. With a lump in my throat, I stood up slowly, words whispering out of me, echoing through the cabin. I proposed a plan, simple and risky, but our only chance to wrest control of our fate from the kidnappers. To my surprise, some passengers nodded, their eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. Others hesitated, but desperation drove them to grasp any chance to escape this mobile prison. With racing hearts, we began to quietly prepare. Every move was calculated, every glance exchanged carried intense and desperate communication. The kidnappers didn't notice our murmurs of planning, absorbed in their own fantasies of power and control. The climax came when we finally decided to act, a burst of movement and determination that shattered the tense silence of the night. It was a moment of calculated chaos, a frenzied ballet of coordinated and improvised actions. Screams echoed, shots rang out in the air, and the bus became a stage of despair and struggle. Each twist was unexpected, every move a risky bet for life. I fought with a courage I didn't know I possessed, adrenaline replacing any doubt or hesitation. The kidnappers, surprised by the resistance they encountered, fought back with renewed fury. But in the end, the determination and unity of the passengers prevailed. The kidnappers were neutralized, surrendering or being driven away with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Silence fell over the bus, interrupted only by the gasping breaths of survivors and the distant echo of approaching sirens. We were free, but forever marked by the night of terror we had faced together. I looked around, seeing pale faces and haunted eyes. We were strangers who had shared the worst moment of our lives, united by the strength and vulnerability each of us had revealed under the weight of danger. I will never forget that night, nor the fears we confronted and the secrets that were revealed. But I will also carry with me the memory of human courage, the capacity to resist even in the darkest moments.